You may like the guy, you may not like the guy. You may think he deserved to be fired. You may think he deserves to have the job. Never fun to talk about somebody being told their job is no longer theirs on a holiday week, but that's what happened this morning. Mack Brown, head coach, North Carolina Tar Heels football program, fired. With the caveat being he will get to coach against NC State this weekend, one last time for the rivalry. The who will coach in the bowl game still up for grabs, but the winningest coach in UNC football history, when you combine Mack Brown 1.0 and Mack Brown 2.0, is no longer the head coach at UNC of the future. Final stats, 113 wins, 78 losses, and a tie. That is a 59% win percentage. Mack Brown 2.0, 44 wins, 32 losses. It's a 57% win percentage. Now, we've done a lot of reacting here on 99.9 The Fan today. We were live this morning as the news happened. Adam Gold, his assortment of guests, and he and Victoria reacting in real time over the last 3 hours. I want to hear from you. 919-860-5326. Call it a Tuesday sound off. Heister Automotive Group hotline, 919-860-5326. Mack Brown informed the team earlier today. Everybody is on the same page. The head coach job no longer his beyond this season. Maybe no longer his beyond the end of the regular season. We still have to see who coaches the bowl.
Yeah, my take on this is that he will probably be out by Sunday. His office will be cleaned out by Sunday.
Week,
that way
he's on a golf course.
Because if you're hiring a new head coach, you don't want the old head coach still kind of lingering around, if that makes sense, when that coach was fired. If there's a retirement, that's a little bit different.
If there's a transitioning to the upper advisory, then maybe. But
that's a little bit different.
I mean, at least the way the first reports came out, Matt Zenitz of 247 Sports and CBS Sports had it first. The word fired was used, which does change the dynamic a bit. And the question is obviously, why now? Could you not wait a week? Because they're I mean, not just the holidays. I mean, I do feel for those that have major job news like that given to them around the holidays. But if you're going to let him coach the rest of the season, why not let him coach the rest of the season? There's a few parts to that. One, I do think the NC State game complicates things. You don't want to make it look like you lost the NC State game, so you're fired. You also don't want to make it so you won the NC State game, you ended a losing streak against your rival, and now we're firing you. So this kind of takes it out of that hand. Also, I do think Mack Brown had been saying a little more emphatically that he wanted to come back, kind of forcing the hand of UNC. Right? There was the reports that he was telling those within the program that he was coming back next year. Earlier this week, he talked about having conversations with Bubba Cunningham, conversations he hadn't had yet, and basically saying he expected to be back, which does semi-force the hand of the school to go, if you're going to keep saying that, we're going to say what we want to say. Matt in Burlington is on the Heister Automotive Group hotline. We have opened up the phone lines for reactions to Mack Brown's firing. The number is 919-860-5326 if you want to call in. We'll start with Matt in Burlington. Matt, thank you very much for calling. What's your reaction to the Mack Brown news?
Hey, Tim. My first reaction is, it was well timed. I know a lot of people's been talking on the radio today about they didn't really understand it, but I think it gives him the ability to go out on top there. If he does beat State, he can go out on a high note. He gets the praise from the fans on the way out. I think he deserves that after everything. I think that the main problem with the Mack 2.0 era was the ability to develop both the offensive and defensive line. He had a lot of big-time recruits on both lines. You look at Zach Rice, you look at Travis Shaw, you look at Desmond Evans. They were all five-star recruits, and none of them really ever improved since they got there. And I think that's going to be the biggest downfall. He did improve with the high school coaches, which was much needed after the Fedora debacle. But overall, I thank him for his service to the university, but it was time to make a change.
Appreciate the call. And I mean, I guess I'll ask you this. Do you think this, you kind of made it seem like this NC State game is, a chance for everybody to say goodbye. Do you think that's the vibe that's going to be? How does it change that NC State game knowing that you don't need to add any emotions to a rivalry game where everybody's already jacked up in every different way?
Yeah, I think that regardless of what's happened this year, I think that he still has the locker room. I don't think he's lost the locker room. I don't think they would went on that stretch in the middle of the year without losing the locker room. So I think that the players are going to be extra fired up. Obviously, they needed to be extra fired up because they haven't beat State in years. So maybe this will help get them over the top and send him out on a high note.
Appreciate the call. Call back in anytime. That was the Heister Automotive Group hotline, open for your reactions to Mack Brown being notified he is fired as UNC head football coach. 919-860-5326. I could see this as maybe a forced, you're gonna sit there and let us thank you for Mack Brown. I don't think he is somebody that wanted the retirement tour. I don't think he wanted to announce this offseason that he was retiring at the end of next season and handpick his replacement. I think he wanted to coach football up until the very end, until someone said you're not allowed to anymore. And this news coming out today ahead of the NC State game and him still coaching the NC State game, does in a small way make it so you're going to hear our applause whether you want to or not. And it does give UNC a chance to have that. It does change the NC State game. I'll put it that way. It does. It makes it a different game for UNC. It might be motivated a little less by we want to end NC State's season without a bowl and more to we want to send our guy, the guy that recruited us, the guy that turned us into the football players we are, out with a victory. Mike in Raleigh has some thoughts on it. He's on the Heister Automotive Group hotline, open for your reactions to Mack Brown's firing. 919-860-5326. Mike, thank you for calling in. How do you react to Mack Brown being on the way out?
Well, I'll relate it to myself a little bit. About 5 or 6 years ago, I looked in the mirror and I realized I was getting old. And I think Mack Brown might have a little problem relating to younger guys. I still feel real young, and I feel like I think young, but when I look in the mirror, I realize I'm not. And I've seen how you get people in their 20s and 30s interact with me, and I think that probably might have something to do just with all the enthusiasm that could be generated over there. And it's not just with players. The other thing, and probably more importantly, as an NC State fan, I'm sorry to see him go.
Okay, so that was two very different points that I'm gonna ask you to kind of reconcile. The first half of your call was he's an older guy, the maybe locker room, the relatability has passed him by, and then you pivoted hard and said you're sorry to see him go. Is that how are both of those things true? Has the game passed him by, or do you want to keep him around?
Well, I'm not a UNC fan.
Oh, sorry, I misheard that.
As an NC State fan, I'm sorry to see you.
I get you now. I was thinking maybe my brain just heard UNC fan. All right, I apologize for that confusion. I know fans don't love being that bit of a little turnover. Appreciate the call. Call back in anytime.
Thank you.
All right, that one, my brain didn't even let me hear NC State. I was just thinking about Mack Brown.
Yeah, when he said that, as an NC State fan, I hate to see him go. It's okay, I see what you're saying now. All right.
The age thing, obviously I think guys can coach into the 70s, 80s, whatever you want, if you're always constantly adapting and staying up with everything that's going on currently, right? The things that had Mack Brown winning a national championship in 2006 aren't the things that are going to win an ACC championship in 2024. I said this earlier, and I'll say it again. This will be our last point before we have to hit a break. When we were at ACC kickoff, Dennis, you and I were there, and we talked to Mack Brown and Omarion Hampton back-to-back.
Yeah.
And the question I asked Mack Brown, kind of as a fun little, hey, this is media day, jokey joke thing, was, all right, last question for you is what should be my first question for Omarion Hampton? Because Omarion was standing over his shoulder waiting to put the microphone on, the headset. And he said, ask him about all the money he turned down to stay at UNC. He could have had 4 times as much money in NIL to go elsewhere, and he's still here. Ask him about that. And he didn't say it with, like he said it much more charming and much more Southern drawl than I could ever pull off because that's Mack Brown. And at the time I was like, that's cool, right? He's highlighting that Omarion Hampton wants to be here. As the season went along, I kind of replayed that in my mind, and I went, I don't know if coaches that get the modern kind of atmosphere in college football are bragging about having 1/4 as much money as someone else had to pay their running back. Right? The younger, the more in tune with NIL, the more in tune with current college football are not bragging about my players love to be here for the colors, for the school colors, for the alma mater. They love to sing the team fight song. They're bragging about, no, we're working to get our players their proper compensation, and we're going to pay top dollar because that recruits. And you may hate it, and I may hate it, and we all may hate when a 5-star says I'm going to the top bidder. But if you want a 5-star, you may have to be the top bidder. And I definitely wouldn't be bragging out there about, hey, we had 1/4 as much for our best player. It's just misreading the room a hint. 1 degree off can change everything.